دكتور، هو عندك الظهر بيأذن؟
هو مش الظهر، دي ميعاد الصلاة.
الإقامة بس أنا فاهم.
أيوه. طيب. We continue our lecture. In the first part of our lecture, we finished exploring Android operating system, and we have talked about generally the vulnerabilities and the breaches of any mobile device. We talk about okay, just a minute. So now we have two other parts of the lecture. The first part is Apple.
السلام عليكم دكتور.
وعليكم السلام.
دكتور أنا آسفة، لكن كان عندي مشكلة في النت. أنا كنت حاضرة أول الكلاس، ووقت الحضور كان فاصل النت اوريدي. البنات قالوا لي.
طيب، أعتقد إن في حد قال وأنا حضرتك، مفيش مشكلة إن شاء الله. طب
عن
ثواني
جد شكرا
ثواني
دكتور.
هعمل تشيك تاني.
أوكي تمام.
So we have finished one part of the lecture, which we talk about Android. And the second part of the lecture, we're going to talk about Apple iOS and Windows Phone operating systems. So these two parts of the lecture, we are going to explore them right now. So for Apple iOS security, we will talk about the iPhone popularity, the Apple iOS operating system, the Apple iOS exploits, and Apple iOS architecture and the App Store. The iPhone introduced recently in 2007 and totally changed the mobile phone landscape because it was the most interesting device in this century. Introducing iPhone the attracted many users to use Apple iPhone because they have a background about Apple. They have strong hardware and strong software, and especially in security. The Apple, especially in security, they have very strong operating systems. The data usage has been, the levels of data use has been skyrocketed. Skyrocketed means very high levels of data usage, and internet access on mobile devices became the norm. So after having iPhone, the popularity of iPhone, most people start to divide the work between PC and the iPhone. They start to use most of the tasks they used on the PC, they use it using the iPhone. For example, sending an email, exploring the internet, chatting with WhatsApp, calling or video conference, and all of these applications and all of these services, they start to use their phone. And the Apple, the company, actively encouraged independent to develop applications. Before that time, it was only the applications from app itself, from Apple itself, from the company itself. After a while, they start to open the development for public. They have accepted some independent development for their applications. So for example, I have a new applications, I can go to the website and assign this application, and then it will appear on the App Store. But it will also go into a procedure for checking and signing After checking and signing, it will become public and anybody can download it. As I told you before, um, this is like it has two sides. One black side, one white side, and one black side. The white side is that now anybody can have his own application. Any company can has its own application, and they can distribute or publish their application on the App Store. But on the other side, the bad guys also can have their application and can reach the App Store. Actually, it's not the reach is not easy, but they still can have reach on the App Store, and you can see some of the breaches coming up from the App Store itself. The Apple iOS as operating system. Oh, sorry for that. The App Store, the Apple iOS itself is a closed source. It is not open source like Android, and follows a walled garden philosophy. What is the walled garden philosophy? Is that you don't have direct access to the internet. The applications don't have direct access to the internet. They have a separator. They have a services to separate the applications from the internet from the outside world. And also they have a separator between each application. As I told you about Android sandboxes, we have here walls like gardens. For example, if you have a house, and this house is an apartment in a building, in a block, it's a flat, like flat build in a building. So you have your neighbors. Your neighbor can pass to your house immediately if they want to breach you. But if you have an apartment, you are the only one in that apartment, and you have a garden or the walled garden. Now anybody want to breach your house should pass by the garden first. You should pass by the garden, then start to breach your house. This is the concept or the philosophy of behind the walled garden. Means you cannot reach immediately the application. There is some kind of separators between each application and the other, and also between applications and the internet. The Apple iOS operating system is a component about Apple iOS operating system is a component layered model. A component layered model. Some components in a layer, some other components in another layer, and so on. The first part is system architecture that involves the operating system platform and hardware used to protect the iOS device. Related to sandbox testing and application isolation. This is a system architecture, is just the part of the operating system together with the sandboxing that separate applications. This is the first part. The second part is encryption and data protection. Encryption and data protection means the way that to protect the confidentiality and the integrity of data passing from point A to point B, or even from application A to application B. As I told you, there is some kind of inter-process communication between applications in all mobile operating systems. Encryption means protect the confidentiality and integrity of data passing from one terminal to another or one process to another. The last part is network security. So when we talk about Apple operating system or Apple iOS security, we have to concentrate on the three parts here. I think the 6 parts, not 3. They are 6 parts. Here, the first one is system architecture, which includes the operating system and the sandboxing, encryption that protect the confidentiality and integrity of the data, and network security, which is the communication between one phone and the other, communication between different phones. We have to use some kind of secure circuit layer and transport layer security, or TLS. Okay, just a second. So network security, and as I told you, we have to concentrate on these 6 parts. The first one is system architecture, encryption, network security, and application security. That's what I'm talking about at the beginning of the lecture, and I told you about the OWASP standard, that some application developers don't know about security. uh, maybe you can guide them to the standards. They will be happy about that, because they don't know where to go, because they are only application developers. They are not security developers. So if you guide them to the standards, that is a very good habit. And includes this application security includes digital authentication and verification. Digital authentication means the authentication that happened to be included in the App Store. Before appearing to the App Store, you have to have a digital signature or digital certificate before coming to the App Store. Your application coming to the App Store, you have to get that certificate. Also, runtime process security, data protection within the applications. For example, nobody will protect your data inside the application. Nobody will protect it. For example, if you have your application running some data unencrypted. Unencrypted. This means maybe your data is vulnerable to some kind of attack. But take care of this, because the operating system itself can handle the communication between two parties or two phone devices using the TSL, the TLS, and SSL. These secure circuit layer and transport layer security, they are encryptions. There are some kind of encryption to the stream of data coming from terminal A to terminal B. Internet services like iMessage, Facebook, and Siri, and iCloud. These messages or these services also should be protected. For example, you don't have a weak username and password for iCloud. Will be disastrous, because all of the data on your phone can be found on the iCloud. So you have to take care of the iCloud for the services that you are using. For example, your location is a disastrous thing. If somebody can reach to your location, maybe can hurt you. He want to hurt you physically, can reach you through the geolocation or GPS and reach your location. And if he want to hit you or hurt you, maybe do that. So internet services are very important to protect. If you are opening them for public, maybe you will have a disaster. Device access means the PIN number that you are using on your phone, or the pattern that you are using to protect your screen when it locks. Okay, so this is the device access. When you talk about the Apple iOS security, you have to pay attention to the 6 parties: system architecture, encryption and data protection, network security, application security, internet services, and finally, device access. The exploits of iOS. Actually, maybe you say Apple is more stronger than Android just because it is closed source. It is not an open source. That is good. That is really a fact. But actually, they are not. They are not stronger. They are not the strongest, or they are not 100% vulnerable. Sorry, no, secure, not vulnerable. So they are not actually, they are not that secure. They are not that 100% secure because sometimes they have faced by some exploits. In 2014, they found a vulnerability in Find My iPhone application, and they make a brute force attack on password for celebrity accounts on Apple iCloud. For some movie stars, they start to search their account and they reach their iCloud and capture their photos. Also, some of the other known vulnerabilities in 802.1x. This is the protocol standard for Wi-Fi. No, this is a certificate standard or something for communication or for access point. Yeah, it's Wi-Fi standard. A cyber criminal could impersonate a Wi-Fi access point. There's some kind in this protocol standard, and they have a vulnerability in the Wi-Fi access point, and the hacker reached the access point. Also, a flaw in iOS, cyber criminals gain access to sandboxed applications to retrieve data from iCloud account. Also, a logic issue existed that prevented the screen from locking. These are the vulnerabilities that, or the exploits. What about the iOS architecture? It is layered architecture like Android, exactly the same thing. It is a layers, it contains a layers. The first layer is the touch layer, which is called the Cocoa touch layer. This Cocoa touch layer is the upper layer that uses or faces the user. The second layer is the media layer, which is between the core service layer and Cocoa touch layer. And the core service layer that is used, or the services that working in the background like GPS and other music players. And the last layer, or the deepest layer, is the core operating system layer. The core operating system layer. So I have also layers here, but as you go deeply, you have more sophisticated layer. You have more complex layer. For example, this is the easiest layer, little complicated, more complicated, and very complicated layer. So this is the layer of complication. It is like Android iOS exactly, but here we can say we have four main layer and very defined layers. It's not like Android is here is defined in Apple iOS is well defined and well separated. Finally, about the app is the app store is a digital distribution platform by Apple mobile application for iOS mobile operating system. So as a company, if you want to have your application, you have to go on a process of authentication and signing. After this authentication and signing by Apple, uh, your app will be live. Your app will be on the App Store and anybody can download it. But look at the black side, somebody has a bad application that is installed together with a legitimate application to hijack the device. So you just take care, don't install anything on your any application. You have to check its authentication. You have to go to a website and ask about the company, the popularity, the rate, anything, or the about any data regarding that application. You just read it and then decide finally to download it or not. Not just click and install. Don't do that. It is launched on July 2008 with a library of 500 applications, but today we have more than 1 million applications. Is only authorized source of third-party applications for iPhone, iPods, and iPads. This is authorized means that your application is not coming to be live immediately. It has to go through verification process. App or the apps or the App Store is maintained by Apple, and Apple monitors the quality of the applications uploaded by the developers. But this is not 100% secure, because some of the applications or the bad applications can pass by this quality test. Final thing to talk about today is Windows Phone security challenges. So the last part of our lecture, we have talked about Android, we have talked about iOS. Now we are talking about Windows Phone operating system. The Windows Phone operating system, we are going to pass by Windows Phone operating system exploits, Windows Phone security architecture, Windows Phone architecture, and last we will talk about Windows Store. Actually, Windows Phone operating system is a replacement of Windows Mobile 6.5 operating system. This is the classic one, and it has a strong permissions and features and security features. That 6.5 was very strong in security. But it came after 6.5, we have Windows Phone 7, and Windows Phone 7 had a lack of security features. But when they found Windows Phone 7 is not secure, they have developed another version, which is Windows Phone 8. And starting from Windows 8, Windows Phone 8 right now, till now, it is okay, and it is very strong. They have added security management features comparable to the iPhone iOS. That's why the order is important. So the most important, the most secure operating system for phones is Windows Phone 8. This is the most secure according to security standards. The second one is Apple iOS. And the last one secure, which is Android. So the most secure one, I thought before, just before in my reading, before coming to this course, I thought Windows Phone is not that secure. But actually, after reading about Windows Phone 8, I found that most of the standards promote Windows Phone 8 for their for the security standards. So the most secure one is Windows Phone 8. The least secure one is Android. Okay. Okay. So the security is notoriously strong. It is visible. The strength is visible to people. They can have they don't have breaches. They don't have common breaches like username and password breaches, like penetration testing breaches, like authentication and authorization, like encryption and decryption. All these features are included in the Windows Phone operating systems. It is less likely to be jailbroken than iOS due to the diversity of devices on which it runs. Exploits on Windows Phone are typically due to breaches of trust rather than breaches of internal security. And that's important point to mention here. The security breach not coming from the operating system itself, it coming from the trust of the application or trust of the user. The apps must ask permission to access phone functions as they use them rather than just at startup. So the permission is not given at startup like normally in the application, but whenever the permission is needed at runtime, it is permitted. If it is not needed, it is not permitted. Windows Phone has many security controls to protect the third-party applications. And this is good for the third-party applications to have them installed on the Windows iPhone. That's because of the security controls introduced by Windows Phone itself. It's like you don't pay too much money for having security in your application. You will find most of the security features installed in Windows Phone on the operating system itself. System is heavily compartmentalized. What the meaning of compartmentalized? Separated using a sandboxing approach to applications. But it is heavily compared to iOS and Android, it is heavily compartmentalized. It means they have been separated. The system is separating the functionality to sandboxing. Even some services, even some processes, even applications, all things are separated into sandboxing. That sandbox prevented them from interacting with one another. Okay, file and protocol handlers assist in pop-up app-to-app. File and protocol handlers assist in app-to-app communication when needed. Interaction remains limited. That means that some handlers are responsible for app-to-app communication between the applications, and the interaction between applications is limited. That is good for security. Why? Because if the communication is open and easy to access between applications, the hackers can reach the applications very easily too. Windows Phone 8.5 is a closed 8.1 is a closed system. This is the latest one version of the Windows Phone operating system, which is Windows Phone 8.1. The 8.1 is the architecture of Windows Phone. The Windows Phone architecture is a Windows NT. Windows NT. NT is like if you hear about the NT kernel before Windows XP. Windows XP didn't have or doesn't have the NT kernel, and the subsequent Windows like Windows 2005, Windows 2000, Windows 2005, and Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 7, all of these operating system included the NT kernel. The NT kernel is a secure kernel. You can say a secure kernel. It is implemented for securing the network, because NT is network. It is used for securing the network, and that's why the kernel is used also in the Windows Phone 8.1, and then the security is raised to Windows Phone 8 because of the security of the underlying kernel. Also, the architecture is a layered model. As I told you, all of the operating systems are layered, but actually the kind of layers is different from one operating system to another. It is like Windows operating system. Exactly. Applications running on the top of the operating system, which will provide a service and programming framework that application use to create user experience. That's the exact structure for any Windows operating system, is a layer for operating system, and all the applications are installed on that layer. The Windows Store. The Windows Store is just a store for the distribution for Windows application, and is the only source for authorized applications from Windows or for Microsoft Windows phone. Microsoft scans apps for security issues and flaws and detect and filter malware. Takes a walled garden approach. As I told you, a walled garden approach. A walled garden approach, as I told you, there is a difference between you stay in an apartment inside a building. Your neighbor can jump over your house. But for walled garden, you have your apartment in a separate, like villa or like a standalone house, and surrounded by a walled garden. If somebody want to reach your house, he must pass by this garden and maybe catch it by a dog or security camera. So this is the philosophy of walled garden. Whenever you see the philosophy of walled garden is used in two operating systems, which is Apple iOS and Windows Phone, is not used in the Android. There is no walled garden philosophy in Android. The concept is not used in Android. It is used in the iOS, the Apple iOS and the Windows Phone operating systems. Okay. And that's all for today. And thank you very much for your listening. And if you have any questions.
You're welcome, Dr.